welcome you to Moon Rising Mystics for our Whispers of Wisdom conversation. This is where today we're going to be talking about awakening our intuition, how to discover that transformative power by listening to our gut, recognizing stable energies, and making decisions aligned with our truest self. So welcome to the call. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening. We're so glad that we have this opportunity to chat today.
So, I just wanted to start off with so those who are new to intuition, because we have touched on this subject in the past. And so I'm sure a lot of people are like, how do I connect to my intuition? But I did want to put out there I have 6 senses, which mirror our physical senses, right? So there's sight, which is clairvoyance, so the ability to visually see through your third eye. Hearing, which is your clairaudience. Smell, is that clairalliance? Alliance?
I always call it
Is it smell?
clairsent. I call it clairsent. It's like, I think this is like, I just want to pause right here. Like, oftentimes there's so many language things that go on. Like what I call clairsentient, Isabel will call it something a little different. Like there's so many different definitions and language. And part of the reason why we want to bring up this conversation right from the get-go is to, have us all be utilizing the same language and understanding and definitions, because that's how we get to understanding. When we don't have the language, there's misunderstanding. When we aren't on the same page about what our words mean, then we can get confused. And so we really want to highlight that throughout this discussion of what is the language we're using? What do you call yourself? And what does it mean to you? Let's all come to that same page. So the 6 senses are super important in understanding. We all have them. We all have our 6 senses, but we also have the spiritual layers to them. And what do they look like? So yes, there's clairvoyance, clairseeing, the clairsent, that
clairsense.
What else do we got?
Touch is clairsentience, knowing, claircognizance, and I think that was all of them.
And then clairgustiance, the clear taste.
Oh yes, clairgustiance.
And then claircognizant, which is the
knowing.
Clear knowing. It's really interesting when you meet someone who has a clear knowing, because that's really the psychic ability. Like they know, but they don't know why they know. And that's very different than, let's say, the visionary with clairvoyance, who gets visions and premonitions, but through visuals. They're getting a visual that's showing them the future. They might not know why it's happening. Whereas the claircognizant, they have the idea in their head. It's implanted in them, a knowingness. It's not through a visual. So I've been getting a lot of clairvoyance visual aids lately. Like the premonitions are really showing up in my life, and that's fairly new for me. And it runs in the family. Like my aunt and my grandmother both had that gift of the clairvoyance of premonitions and seeing things that are going to happen in the future. And at first there's that piece of, okay, do I want to lean into this? Do I want to trust this? Like, how is this scary? All of the things. And it's a development with your spiritual gifts to recognize and accept them as gifts, not curses.
Right? They're not curses, no. Which we'll talk about, like the negative side of, well, not negative, but how people don't want to trust their intuition, because there's a fear of trusting intuition. And so we'll talk about that too. But I think because you're leveling up to a different level right now is why you have so much that's turning on for you.
Yes.
You're opening up. Your heart is opening up in a different way right now. So you're going into the flow and the ease of being able to connect spiritually more than you were in the past.
Which is really interesting. I've been doing this work for 20 years, and yet there's always more growth available. And one of the things for me, as I awaken my intuition, because there's always new levels, part of my personal practice is tuning in. Am I in my most expanded version of who I am right now? And that question really allows me to go, am I contracting in any way? Am I in a fear-based mindset in any way? am I allowing limiting beliefs to come in any way? Am I making myself small? And that's the big one for me. Am I making myself small to make other people comfortable? Am I making myself small so that I don't have to do the work? Am I trying to find a scapegoat of like getting out of what I'm supposed to be working on? All of those things are questions I have to ask myself on a daily basis to recognize, am I in contraction or am I in expansion? And so one of my daily practices is to, when I go to bed, not only do I do my Reiki Gokai, I chant in Japanese, and I brush off the day, I clear out the day's energy, I sweep it off of me. And then from that point, I do my self Reiki care. And then I envision myself having wings and expanding them and really letting them stretch wide and showing up in that way. From that point, oftentimes my wings will take me to other spiritual realms. I might journey some, all of these things. And yet, in that expansion is when I feel I'm most awake, most heightened energy to receive whatever is going to show up for me, because I'm not in a state of fear if my wings are wide.
Now you're out of your head because you're really tuning into your spiritual self, your spiritual body. And when we sleep, we're doing the work that we can't necessarily do in our waking day. For whatever reason that is, maybe it is fear, maybe it is our own blockages, or we're not connecting, and our spirit's like, well, I got to go home, or I got to go reconnect with the other side of ourselves so that we can continue to do the work and to look at what our mission is and our energy is here and what we're doing. And it brings in that balance. And I think that when we go to bed, that's an awesome way of saying, yes, we need to tune in and wipe off the day's energy, do that expansive work, even when we're sleeping, because one, you want to still be protected. A lot can happen in your sleep around you if we're not protecting our energy. And then the other is, even for me last night, I've been having this shoulder pain because of how I sleep. I don't know what the heck I did, but it hurts. And so last night I just put my hand on my heart and my other on my solar plexus and started falling asleep. Man, I was traveling and seeing all kinds of like codes, and I was just like, go with it. And then at some point I woke up, and from head to toe, and I could feel it now, my body was just buzzing. And I was like, what is that? And I was like, oh yeah, I went to bed doing Reiki. And it's like, my arm still hurts, but everything else feels great. And that's probably why I couldn't wake up. I was just like, no, I want to keep going.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally. So, as you're listening to this conversation, if this is all new information to you, that's okay. And noticing, what is it that you can do to step into your alignment, to your expansion, into your vortex of energy, to allow the intuition to show up. So when we're in the beginning steps, it's going to be very different from Shantel and myself, who's been practicing this for years. And we're at that point of, it just keeps getting better and better. And that's okay. And so, it can feel very much like I'm in my season of being awake right now, and then seasons of I'm asleep right now. And that's okay. I feel like I always need to put that caveat in of, don't judge or shame yourself if you haven't always been this way. I've been doing Reiki for 20 years, and yet there has been seasons of my life where I haven't practiced, or I didn't open up my intuitive gifts and I shut them down. Now, when I have that feeling of, I need to shut this down, it's too much, it's pulling me out of the present. And my guide last night was just basically like, why would you shut down your greatest gift? Like, that is not what we're supposed to be doing at all. And I'm like, you're right. Okay, fine. Like, I'll do it. Right? Like, I have these arguments with my guides sometimes. And so for you, let's just start with a baby steps. What does it look like? And what's the language that we're going to use? Because oftentimes, as we are awakening to our understanding of who we are, let's put it that way, I understand myself in a greater capacity, and I notice these things showing up for me, these gut feelings, these energies around me. When I walk into a room, I can sense what's going on in the conversation. Whatever it is for you, the first step is always having this awareness, because when we have the awareness of that it's happening, we can give it our power. We highlight it, and in that highlighting of it, we're saying, yes, more of this, please. So we need to pay attention. So how can we slow down in our life to pay attention? And what language do we need to use?
That's what I was gonna say, is bringing the language in and being comfortable with yourself enough to say, this is what I'm feeling, and not worrying about what others say or feel or how they're judging us, because we are born with intuition for a reason. This is this is how we know we're safe. This is how we know, like, there's this creative energy that's building and growing and evolving. And this is, so when do we need to slow down? When do we need to rest? That's our body speaking to us. And when we don't have the language and we're not comfortable to say, and a couple of them I wrote is vibes, energy, guides, chills, and higher self. This is all language that we can use to say, my guides are letting me know right now this is not a safe situation. We need to go. Or you walk into a room, like Christine was saying, and you feel there's something off, right? That is your intuition coming forward to say, hey, put on, pay attention, open your eyes. Let's see what's going on in this space. Maybe you're protecting yourself, or there's just something going on that you want to know. Or if you walk in a room and it's an excitable energy, you can literally shift from, maybe you're feeling a little down or a little depressed, and then you walk into a situation and everyone's laughing. That's going to lift you up. And your intuition's going to say, okay, now have fun, be playful, versus stay in that lull kind of energy. And it really is listening to ourselves, our physical body. How is it showing up to speak to us, and having the language to do that?
Yes. Yeah. So notice what that is for you. And, I often recommend and suggest to go back to your childhood memories. How did it show up in your life before there was some authority figure that told you not to? So did you have imaginary friends? Did you hear voices? Did you have an empathetic link with your siblings or schoolmates where you just wanted to go sit with them when they were upset? Like, those can all lead back to the primary spiritual gifts, so that when we become an adult, we can reawaken them. So many of our younger listeners right now might recognize that they were never suppressed. Like, I was really lucky. Mine weren't suppressed as a child because my dad was doing Reiki as a kid. And I grew up in a very accepting household, which was lovely. It didn't really roll over into high school or middle school or the rest of it. But at the same time, I didn't have to hide my truth. I think I hid my truth to be in those other spaces. I made myself small. And so I shrunk down, and I shrunk my gifts until I was able to really awaken them. And that for me was at 20. And I'm really blessed by that. So wherever you are at in your life, you can say, all right, I'm going to start paying attention. Let's just start there. What does that look like? If you are starting to pay attention and you notice what's going on in the room, what's going on in your body, what's going on when you close your eyes and allow your imagination to come through, what is it for you? Is it your most expanded truth? The things that we have in our head might not be. And I think that's something that we need to recognize also, that oftentimes we need to do this with intentions to keep the practice safe. Because if you have low self-esteem, if you have negative self-thoughts, those might not be your higher self talking to you. They're not, because your higher self loves you. Your divine loves you. You are inherently worthy to be your most expanded self. So if you have that contraction going on, this is the time to really start to thought catch, going, what's going on in my head? And is it leading me towards my goals or away from my goals? Is it allowing me to be my most expanded self, or do I shrink down and make myself small? Those shrinking down thoughts are not you. I just want to say that those aren't you. That is something from your past. That's your trauma. That's your fear. That's whatever it is. Those are your inner demons that we need to release and let go of. And so how can we step into that, having that awareness and going, I'm going to let those fade away as I say yes to my gut feelings, my understanding that I am open and available to having miracles show up in my life. I'm open and available to seeing the signs to show me that I'm on the right path. What does that look like? And so when we just begin this journey, it can be overwhelming, it can be scary, it can be whatever it is, or it might feel so good and so natural. And
So
it's
familiar.
like so familiar. It's like stepping into the flow because this is who you are. This is who you are. We all have it. It might show up differently for each one of us, but we all have it. This is our soul speaking to us. And that soul has access to our soul memories, past lives, future lives, our sacred contracts, those soul agreements that we came in with, all of it. And so when we start paying attention, notice the goosebumps, notice the feather, notice how it's showing up in your lives, and then using the language that will allow you to come into that expansion. So like for me, it might be like I'm feeling the vibes of this room and X, Y, and Z. Like, what language are we using to say yes to? I am okay speaking my truth and feeling the things.
Yeah. And that's so, so important, because if we can't even speak our truth about what we're feeling, how are we going to speak our truth about anything else? Right? It's because that is the core of who we are. And if we have a hard time just saying, I feel this about that, or whatever it is, my intuition is speaking to me right now. And if we're struggling to communicate that, then a lot of times the throat's going to be blocked. We're having a hard time expressing ourselves to our partner, to our parents, to our coworkers, because we can't even speak the truth of our innate ability. And so it really is important to recognize all of our feelings, our thoughts, recognize when the mind is stepping in and is telling you, no, that's not real. Don't think about that. Or, oh, you're just making that up. Going back to childhood, my family always is like, if we didn't have bad luck, we wouldn't have any luck at all. So it's like, don't think it or it happens. And if so, you're manifesting something negative. And so it's like, no, that's just your intuition letting you know something is coming forward. That's like the big light that's coming. It's letting you know. So it doesn't mean you thought it and you created it. It's your intuition saying something's coming forward. Heads up, pay attention. And but it's the interpretation and the language in which my family used it. So that's still spoken like that. My grandma's 88 years old and she still says that. If our family didn't have bad luck, we didn't have any luck at all. And I'm like, oh, Grammy. I'm like, I have great luck. Like, I turned that around so fast, but it just shows you the conditioning in which we're brought up in.
Right. Well, and I think that point right there, the conditioning in which we were brought up in. My grandmother, she prayed to St. Anthony. She gave all of her power over to the Catholic Church in her manifestations. So here's a lovely story. We were trying to get out to the lake. They lived on a lake house, and my cousin couldn't find her bikini top. And my grandmother says, don't you worry about it, sweetie. By the time you get here, it will be here. Right? Like, you'll have it. Don't worry about it. There was a bikini in the dryer, the matching top in the dryer. It was in her bag. It was 8 bikini tops, 8 matching bikini tops, identical bikini tops, all of them, 8 of them showed up by the time she reached the beach house, the lake house. And that is what I grew up in. Like, don't worry about it. Spirit's got you covered. It's going to show up exactly as it needs to. And notice the huge difference between how Shantel's grandmother showed up with her gifts versus my grandmother showed up in her gifts. She might have not given the power to herself that she was actually creating these circumstances and miracles to happen in her life, but we grew up witnessing it. Absolutely. We grew up talking about it. And it was very much like, don't worry, Spirit's got you covered every single time. Like, don't worry, I'll just talk to St. Anthony. Like that was like a normal thing in the house. Like, something's missing. We need a new car, like whatever it was. Oh, don't worry. I'll just ask St. Anthony. Oh, it'll be here. That trust.
That's pretty cool though. That's a cool way of like growing up. I think that has shifted now, like with my granddaughter, because both my granddaughters, but the oldest one, man, she speaks some stories, and I'm always texting mom, who is, and I'll give her the names because she's like, that's my home. We'll show her pictures of mountains. That's my home. And my mom and my dad, and we hiked up that, and she's 5 years old. And they dropped me and hurt my knee, and she's got names for who her mom is and her dad and this whole huge story. And I'm just like, where are you getting this information from? And it's easy to say, what an amazing imagination you have. But no, it's like, yeah, let's talk about that. Why and where did that come from? And so it's just, we develop it in our household now. It's all about developing that, because she's obviously really intuitive and connecting to that. And I don't want that taken from her. And I was joking with her the other day because she started 5th grade or kindergarten on Tuesday. And I said to her mom, if her teacher tries to kill that in her, I said, I'm going to show up. And she looks at me and she's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, nothing, I'll just talk to your teacher. Like, but we're going to continue the development of it. So it was actually really cute.
Right. And I think that's it, is that how were we conditioned as a child? How are we conditioning the next generation? How are we bringing in the awareness? And it all starts with ourselves first. Like, we have to recognize our own spiritual gifts and our own intuition, and trusting those vibes, trusting the feelings, trusting the gut, and going, it's like this. Have you ever felt like you remembered something you needed to go, you were out at the car and you were about to leave, but you remembered something that you forgot and you had to go back in the house? That spirit delaying you on purpose to prevent something that's going to happen that might be bad. And so take a breath. Don't stress out that you're going to be late. This is a miracle in the process. Take the time to breathe, find whatever you were looking for that it's just like spirit was giving you an excuse to go back inside. Go back inside, take 5 minutes, realign, feel into it, and then go back out to your car. Because it's those kind of things that we overlook all the time. And they're blessings. They're such blessings. So if you get the feeling, I'm going to go a different way home today. Why is that? Why are we getting that hit? And I did this all the time when I was 20, when a lot of my spiritual development work was first taking place, Reiki training, midwifery training, all of it. I lived in a town called Ashland, Oregon. And I was a barista at one of the coffee shops right where people would come down from Mount Shasta. And so they would go to Mount Shasta, they would have visions, they would see aliens, whatever it was. And then they would end up in my coffee shop. And it was the most fun I've ever had, because I just allowed my intuition to run wild. I had no kids, I had no responsibilities. Like, I didn't need to do anything. I just needed to show up for school and go to work. And that was my life. And it was the first time I had such freedom to play in spirit. And it was during that time where I could project what it was that I wanted to create in my life and let it show up for me, right? Like, it was every person who walked into the coffee shop, because it was a slow coffee shop. It was a little itty tiny thing. So when people showed up, I was like, you're here for a reason. I'm supposed to learn something for you, or I'm supposed to teach you something. And that is how I interacted with every single person who came into my awareness, into my experience. And when did life get fast where we stop paying attention to those interactions, right? Like, life speeds up. We get the job, we get the kids, we get the responsibilities, adulting, and we forget that spiritual layer that's happening on top of everything. Why did I meet that person? Why did I have that conversation? Why did my car break down? What needed to happen here? Like, the more I step into my spiritual gifts now at 42, I'm returning to that. Why did this person show up? What conversation did I have? Someone DM'd me. Why was that? What kind of connection am I supposed to be creating there? And when you come at life with that openness and curiosity, instead of in a state of fear of judgment, fear of others, fear of life experiences, whatever it may be, things really begin to shift and open and expand. And you really start recognizing if fear is showing up, it's for reason. It's literally coming at you so you can clear and heal it. And so we can't be afraid of the fear, because the fear is yet just another pointing you in the right direction of your healing journey.
Yeah, it's recognizing what each of our emotions are and why they are showing up. Because emotions is such a powerful needle, it's the spectrum of understanding how to communicate with your environment. And so if fear is showing up, there's a reason why, and that is pay attention. If happiness and joy is showing up, there's a reason, pay attention. Instead of, what we do as people is we hold on to all of our emotions and we don't interpret them. We don't understand why we're feeling a certain way. We just take it for the current experience in which we're having. If we're in an argument, of course, anger, fear, and whatever, anxiety might show up. Or if we're having a good time with friends, it's going to look different. But we also have to take the time to pay attention to why those emotions are showing up outside of those experiences, because that is literally how we're being communicated with. And so just taking a moment to tune in and say, what am I feeling right now? And where is that showing up in my body? And is there a message there? Is there a connection there? Is there something from the past that's showing up? And then recognizing that we can heal that, we can heal that and get rid of it, not get rid of it, but seal it and everything. But it's the intuitive part of ourselves that is saying, if you feel this, remember that, like maybe there's a connection. And so then you can really play with that. And so I just feel like emotions don't get enough credit on the sense of intuition, because it's just, we're just packing them and storing them for past, experiences.
Yeah. Like remembering that emotions are just energy in motion, right? So when we have the feelings show up, I love that. Like, where in the body is it resonating? Like my heart center has just been really buzzing over the last like month. And so it's like feeling in, what is that? Where is this coming from? What does it feel like? Why is it there? What heaviness needs to be released? What is it? And just getting curious to recognize, how is this supporting, enhancing my life? Or is it in that contraction once again? Right. And I think when we can allow ourselves to feel, oh my gosh, right there, when we can allow ourselves to feel the feelings. And how often have we been so programmed to suppress our feelings, to shove them down, not experience them, so that we can get on with the 9 to 5 routine, and it's not serving us, right? And so when we come to that place of, wow, I felt anger today, I felt small today, I felt shame today, I felt guilt today, I felt whatever it was, this is when journaling is amazing. Like when we can come home at the end of the day or before we go to bed and just emotional dump into our journal, it gives us a playing ground to sift through them, to go, I wonder why that showed up today. Where did it trigger something from the past? What is it trying to speak to me? How do I need to transmute that? It's part of the healing journey. So whether it is journal dumping emotions, whether you're leaving yourself a voice memo just to get it out and get it into the air, whether that is, one of my favorite techniques is to get a giant piece of paper and mind map it out, right? So you're putting a topic and it has extensions to other topics and it can all relate to one another, and you're processing it. That's all it is. You're processing the emotions. How are you going to process the emotions that are showing up for you so that you can recognize where your self-healing journey goes, and trusting the feelings that are showing up? When we start to trust the feelings are showing up and why are they showing up, then we can more easily recognize those gut feelings, those intuitive feelings, those vibe feelings, so that you can start recognize, who is my truest self? Who is my most expanded version? What does that look like for me? And so I think this is one of the greatest soul assignments I can give, is figuring out how you're going to emotionally process, not in a way of self-judgment, just out of curiosity, just going, these are all of the emotions that came up for me. This person said this, and then I felt that. And then the next time that similar situation shows up, instead of having a knee-jerk reaction, you're getting triggered, you're able to slow it down going, oh yeah, I already mind mapped this, or I already journaled on this, or I vlogged on this, or whatever it is for you, and going, I know where this is coming from. I'm going to make a new choice in my response. Yeah. And you're learning to listen to intuition at the same time, because oftentimes as I do this process, that's when the intuition is showing up. This is when I'm listening to my guides. This is when visions show up. This is when I want to draw it out. Whatever it is for you, how are you emotionally processing and allowing intuition to guide you to your inner truth?
So there are some tips on how to connect also to our intuition. And one of them is just connecting to breath. It's just coming in, it's silencing the mind, it's dropping into the heart, it's taking those deep breaths, it's releasing that breath and coming into that centered point of ourself to allow spirit to communicate with us. And when we can do that, that's where you can ask your higher self questions. You can ask for that guidance of a situation that you're dealing with, or something that you're having. Maybe there's a name of a book you want, or there's, should I take this trip or that trip, whatever it is, but getting centered within yourself and then communicating with your spirit is going to allow you to have that dialogue through intuition to be able to answer the questions that you're struggling with here. And so really remembering that it's in the silent moments that we can have that relationship with ourselves to be able to develop our intuition.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can utilize the breath. And I think this is why doing trance breath work, or doing microcosmic orbit, or doing square breathing, or there's so many different varieties of breath work, and it's all to help the parasympathetic nervous system to come on board. So we come out of that fight flight and we come into the deeper knowing of our sensual self, our physical body, this physical container. And when we can recognize that, we are giving space for spirit to show up, right? Yeah. So, and I think that's it. We're creating sanctuary for our body, for our mind, to allow the intuition to come through, to allow spirit to come through, whatever you want to call it. And then we get back to that language. Is it a guide? Is it your intuition? Is it source energy? That doesn't matter so much. It's preparing the way. It's preparing your heart space to be quiet, to allow your mind to be quiet, to be able to listen. And this is interesting in the fact that I remember this was a couple of years ago, it was before the pandemic, and I was actually at a Christian service, and the pastor at the time was talking about listening to God, and he was talking about it with the Bible in his hand, and I was like, why am I here? First off, I'm like, what's going on with this? But it was interesting, the fact that I had a guide show up, and he was like, and he highlighted everyone in the audience who actually knew how to listen. And he told me, you're supposed to teach them how to listen because they're missing the point. Only a few know how to awaken their intuition and truly listen to what source is saying. And it's not by reading the Bible, I mean, that's heavy, but that meaning if you're doing it through repeating of a passage or, study, it's not studying. It's how do I get blank so I can hear and truly listen to hear what source has to say versus, keeping the mind busy and going. So what is that for you? I mean, it was a really aha moment. I was like, you're right. I can't, why am I here? But in the space of how do we cultivate a quiet space, a sanctuary space, a sacred space to do this work in our lives, and to be able to say yes to that, we have to know that we are worthy of that we deserve a sanctuary, that we deserve to have a space to be quiet in. And when I was a young mom, I didn't think that was true. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
deserve a sanctuary. I didn't deserve my own time. My life was my children. My life was my husband. My life was everyone else but me. Right. And so we have to kind of reel back. If you are feeling resistance to developing your intuition because it's, well, I have to put others before myself, or people pleasing. Whoa, 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 whoa. Trust me, from the other side of it, you are going to be a better mother, a better partner, a better child to your parents, whatever it is, if you have your full intuition on board. And then you'll know. And the intuitive link that you can have with your children, the intuitive link that you can have with your parents, the intuitive link you can have with your partner, your friends, whoever it may be, is going to be so much more profound if you take the time to do this work and create yourself a sanctuary space where you say, you know what, I deserve the 10 minutes. I deserve the 20 minutes. I deserve whatever amount of allocated time that you can carve out for yourself, and going, there's 24 hours in a day. Of course, you deserve 10 minutes alone in sanctuary, in yourself, so that you can quiet the mind and listen.
I think that's where a lot of people are going to see where their codependency shows up, is because we feel like I can't have that 10 minutes of time, or you're codependent on the job, codependent on the responsibilities, the kids, the husband, everything you're saying. But if we're codependent on the situation, whatever it is, intuition has no space to show up, because that means we're not in our moment. It means that we're not paying attention to what's happening right here, right now. We're not enjoying it. We're doing it for everything and everyone else. And if we can't tune into ourselves, then there really is no space for growth, for recognition. And that's where I think a lot of people get, we get stuck in our head. We get stuck in these negative patterns of self. And when we can give a moment to ourselves to say, I am going to go tune in. I am going to go sit down for 10 minutes and be quiet. Those thoughts that come through that is outside of the chatter of our life in this world, that those thoughts and voices come through so strongly when the moment we give them the opportunity to show up. And I'll say, when you were bringing up a feather, I'll give you an example. The other day, so last week was the 11th year of my son's transition. And I was in the pool, and there was this tiny, tiny little feather that floated by, and I picked it up. And I showed my husband, and I said, look, it's a feather from Austin. And he kind of looked at me. I go, I'm in my days right now. So every coin, every feather, they're all messages for me. And it was like we were joking. And I put it out on the concrete to dry, and I forgot about it. Well, I thought about it over the next day or two, but I wasn't in a place where I could go grab it if it was still out there. And of course it wasn't. Well, then 2 days ago, I went out there, and in the water, in a whole different spot of the pool, was that feather. And I was like, that's so funny. So yes, that feather was, but I was tuned in enough to recognize, hey, this is a message of spirit coming through and saying like, hey mom, I'm here. And then when I didn't have it, now it's on my altar, and because I collect those. And so now it's on my altar, and I thought, well, that was pretty cool, but if I would have looked at any judgment and said, yeah, you're right, that's silly, that probably isn't, I would have just tossed the feather. But it made its way back to me either way, because it was meant to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
it's also not allowing anybody else's judgments, their voice, their thoughts, expressions to block us from what our innate knowing is. Because if we have that knowing, it's showing up for a reason. And coming back to symbolism, a spirit can only communicate to you through symbolism, right? Unless you can hear, but not everyone has that. Not everyone has that gift. And you have to tune in and do all the work. But just tuning into your intuition in the moment is going to give us so much opportunity to connect with our guides and our spiritual team and everything that's around us.
And I think it comes back to that. This is a feeling that, like, a gut feeling. Why is it called a gut feeling? Because it's so inherently tied to solar plexus, meaning your solar plexus, it can easily dismiss something, or it can say yes to something, right? And so when we're worried about judgment of others, as we develop our intuition, it's you're giving your power away to someone else. There's that solar plexus. You're giving your power to the people who are judging you versus claiming your power and saying, no, this is my truth. This is my knowingness and I own it, right? That's solar plexus. And when we have a weak solar plexus, when it is not confident, when it's not clear, when it's lacking its full power and passion and motivation and strength and fire from within, then it's so easy to dismiss everything. And so if your intuition isn't showing up in its full capacity, we need to look at the solar plexus. Who are we giving our power away to? Are we giving our power to our past experience when grandmother said like, oh, it's all bad luck, don't pay attention to that? Are we giving our power away to an ex? Are we giving our power? Like, that was me. Like, I definitely had relationships in my past that basically called me a witch and a bitch and all of the other things. And so it was anytime my intuition showed up, I was crazy. I wasn't worthy of this. Right. And so I would give my power away going, yeah, you're right. I am just crazy. I am just delusional. I'm just whatever that conversation was. And I try to shut it down. Why did I shut it down? To stop the abuse.
Yeah.
Right. So we're giving our power away from our solar plexus if we cannot come into the state of, this is who I am. And if you can't accept me for who I am, then you don't get to be a part of my experience. This is who I am.
And then now, because you had that experience, your intuition is going to show up. If, say, somebody comes into your life and gives you those red flags, your intuition speaking to you, you're going to have now the ability to say, no, you are not for my highest good, and I'm not even going to start a relationship with you. You know, you recognize those people that have the same shadow self as your ex, and you're like, no, been there, done that, learned that lesson. Thank you, Spirit, for revealing to me what I needed to see. Because we can really walk through life in these rose-colored glasses thinking everybody's wonderful, and only is it our intuition that's going to say, no, pay attention closer. And Diana was saying her ears ring. I love that. My ears ring too. And people go, oh, it's tinnitus. No, there's a huge difference. And I just want to put that out there. Tinnitus, you ring 24/7. Spirit, when you're matching that vibration, that frequency, that's when the ears ring. It's the awareness. It's what are you thinking about doing and saying in the moment? Tuning into that intuition right there.
I'm sitting over here giggling because the way Spirit used to get my attention, it wasn't ringing my ears. They would pull on my ear. It would turn bright freaking red. My ear would hurt. They would pull it like they were trying, like, like old time grandma would like pull my ear, right? So my ear would be bright red and I would know that they needed to talk to me. That's how I knew they needed to talk to me. And I was like, okay, God, I got to shut up and go into my spiritual space so I can listen to whatever they're saying. And it would happen, especially when I wasn't tuned in on a regular basis. Like I'm pretty freaking tuned in right now, like on a regular everyday basis. But when it was quiet, when it was like, I wasn't giving, when I was in the thick of it, when it was, I wasn't in my highest truth. I wasn't in my personal power. I wasn't in my solar plexus energy. They would pull on my ear to get me to pay attention. It would hurt. It would hurt for days until I would sit down and listen to them. And so what is it? How is that reflective in your life? Like what is showing up in such a big way that you can't ignore? And I just feel like there's something in your life that you can't ignore. Is this your physical health? Is this something is on repeat and it keeps showing up for you? Like what is showing up where you need to slow down? We need to slow down. We need to slow down so that we can pay attention. And I find that it's fascinating. We live in such a high speed society and we're so disconnected with nature anymore. What is it like when we can slow down and just be present in nature? Like I am inviting more nature time into my life. I'm spending more time in nature because I have spent so many years in front of a computer, which I love all of you. I love all of our listeners. I love doing the podcast. I love all the things. And what if I brought my computer out into nature with me while I tuned in, right?
Yeah.
Like how would that show up? So I'm inviting the space of let's explore, let's play with this, let's see how it is. How can I turn these gifts up to their fullest potential? Because I don't think I've hit it yet, right?
No, I don't think we ever hit it. I don't think
Right.
it's ever to the point of even those who are the most intuitive, they can still level up because we're
Yeah.
still in that physical body. So
Right.
there's still this level of limitation that's going to come through, even if we are the most aware, lightened being that we can be, right? Because we wouldn't be here anymore if we have fully succumbed to it. But I love the idea of actually being able to go outside and to be in nature and to hold our classes out there when we can. Sitting in nature, just meditating for a few moments and listening to the wind, listening to the birds, listening to nature around us and tuning in. And I want to say too, is like when you were talking about your experience, this takes discipline. This takes work. This is a
Yes.
very dedicated practice. This is not something you just wake up to one day and you're like, okay, I got this. It does, because every day you have to have the intention to slow down, to pay attention, to be aware of it. And then when it shows up, to actually listen to it.
Oh
And
my
that's
gosh.
where with my practice is my knowings are right here. And it's very interesting. It's just like when my guides come, my downloads, and it's giving me that message, it's here. And I know that. And so I can't even deny it. And I'm sure that I have in the past plenty of times, because I'm that visionary that comes forward and says, we need to do this, we should shift there, move here, whatever it is. And not everyone around me can see what I see. And that's okay. But sometimes it gets in my way. And then I feel like, why is that? And then I have to stop and recognize there's other things that can happen as I'm preparing for that big picture to show up. And so that's where I've been moving and grooving within my own intuition, is knowing where it is. And I find that my guides, they remove me seconds before drama ever occurs. And I have so many examples of that, to where it is literally like I will be out in the at work with everyone, and then I go into my room and I come back and it's like all this drama happened. I'm like, when did that happen? What? How? When? How? It's just so funny. And it's like I'm always pulled out and then I'm brought right back in. And I'm like, I'm not meant to be a part of any of this. And that allows me to stay neutral. And I totally appreciate that. And I give gratitude and thanks for that, because I don't want to be a part of anything that isn't for me. But I just find it interesting now that I've really tuned into it. It's like, no, whether I'm driving past, the spiritual center to go get something to eat and I come back and I miss some big old moment. And I'm like, I just drove past 10 minutes ago and everyone's car's here. And I came back and nobody's there except for the few people that are now discussing what just happened. I'm like, wow. And there's not a lot of drama, but people are people, things happen. And so it's just very interesting to witness it and to see it live and in action. And when we can see it live in action, then we really want to tune back in. And that's the magic of it. Tune in.
Well, and I love that tuning in, like you're tuning into a certain set frequency and you're no longer available to lower your frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what I see in you, Shantel, every single freaking time, whether it's at the spiritual center or like when we were in Costa Rica, you weren't available to go lower. This just wasn't, you weren't available to have that in your experience, which I love working with you because you're such an amazing example of like, no, this is my frequency. It's this or better. It's this or better. It's this or better. It's this or better. And to be in connection with you, to have that witness of going, this is where my inherent worth, desire, spiritual gifts are, and I'm not going lower than that. Like you are setting you're tuning in. Here's your frequency. And where is it that I am available to shift down? And that's when we get into the archetypes and prostitute and all of the things, right?
Yeah.
And just having that awareness. And I love that we had the conversations on sacred contracts. I love these pieces of it because when we can recognize where we're at in our life and where our I want to say misgivings or like our faults are easy easy downgrades, like where are we getting pushed on that makes us go, oh yeah, I can dip lower, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can meet you where you're at, and can have a lower vibration. And then recognizing, well, crap, that didn't feel good. Right? Like that brought in the patterns and the lower vibration and the fear and all.
I so love that right there. Because that is it. When you lower it, when you do bring yourself to that level of what you've grown out of, and then you dip your toe back in and you go, oh no, yeah, I remember why I left that behind.
Right? Yeah, that's it. Like I'm not, I don't want to be available for that anymore. So if I'm no longer available for that, then I better freaking claim my truth. I got to claim who I am. I got to claim my gifts. I got to claim my authenticity and saying, this is who I am. Take me or leave me. You can love me or you can leave me. Like either way is okay with me. But I'm not going to lower my vibration to be in this drama or this turmoil or these patterns. I'm no longer available for that. So guess what? This is who I am. And how difficult is it to get to that point in your life where you're willing to sacrifice attachments and connections and the people pleasing and trying to make other feel more comfortable because of your presence. I'm just, that has been the work, because I think for me showing up online, that's easy for me to stand in my truth. It's easy for me to be like, I'm here now. This is who I am. Take me or leave me. I like watch or not, listen or not. Like it's fine. Like I'm not going to take it personally. And in daily life, when you have real people in front of you going, this is who I am, take me or leave me, it's like, okay, this is the real work, because I think there's so much of it where the witch's wound shows up, or these other places where you've been rejected, where you've had misfortunes show up when you showed up in your authentic truth, and it kept making you small. And so we have to heal and process and transmute that so that we can say, you know what, it's freaking worth it. I'm no longer available to be at that lower vibe, because I deserve better. And when I know that I deserve better, I deserve a happy life. I deserve to have abundance. I deserve to have wealth and riches of all kinds of experiences. I'm not just talking about monetary. Then guess what? It can show up for you. Like there's the basis of manifestation. We have to know we're worthy of it. It can't be just, I want this, 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 I want this on repeat, because you're going to be stuck in a state of wanting. How do we move it into the vibration of like, I know I'm freaking deserving of that. I'm worthy of that. Of course, that's going to be in my experience. It might not be in this moment, but I know it's on the way. I know it's right around the corner, because I can feel it, because I'm holding that vibrational set of I'm worthy of this, right? So when we can have our intuition on board and we know we are worthy of it and we can utilize it as a strength, well, guess what? If intuition is working with our deepest desire, it's all going to unfold for us. And the easiest, fastest, clearest way possible. So develop your intuition, because it's worth it.
And I'm going to add that if you are in a situation where you feel like you're having to compromise your own integrity or your own level of where you're at, and you're finding yourself dipping down into it, do it to hold space, not to interact, not to engage in it. Like say it's an argument or something. You don't have to engage in it just because they're fighting with you. You can just hold space for that person, for what they're going through, for their perspective of it, or their emotions, or what they're experiencing. But we don't have to engage in that. And that's where we can have that buffer zone. And I think there was a question asking about triggers and how do you not respond? Well, if we don't have the buttons to push, if we've healed the buttons, there's nothing for them to trigger. So that's why it's always coming back to ourselves. Well, we have to recognize what it is we need to work on so that can't happen. But really just holding space for them. And then when you can, then the situation it's over, you've still held onto that part of yourself that you can stand strong in and say, yes, we had this conversation. Now you can go back and you figure it out. Like you can go and process what it was. And if it's something you need to revisit, that's fine. But if not, no, it is what it is. And we're all working from the level in which we are at. And some just haven't gotten to where you are yet.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And so we get to take baby steps if it's baby steps. We get to take leaps if it's leaps. And wherever you're at, whatever you're ready for, know that it's a journey, it's a process, and it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth taking those steps to say yes to you.